Hello, BookTube. As you could tell from the title of the video, this is a video for one of my favorite subscribers. Elizabeth today, October the 23rd, reaches the same age as me, 28 years old. Isn't that wonderful? Now, I know that I'm not supposed to say that some of my subscribers are my favorites. I know that I'm supposed to love you all equally, but have you looked at yourself lately? Some of you, I think you would be willing to admit, are a little on the sketchy side. But Elizabeth has always been one of my favorites, not only because she's a wonderful presence on BookTube in the comments and whatnot, but also because she sends me pictures of Penguin classics that she finds on her bookish travels. A lot of people do that. Hers are sometimes very choice. Oh my. And when I was thinking about, how I could commemorate her birthday in a video, I thought, well, I'll make a video for her. The rest of you can listen as long as you don't bother the birthday girl. But I thought, what better theme for such a video than Penguin Classics? Especially since, as I've mentioned on this channel many times, I go to my Penguin Classic shelves regularly. I know I'd like to say that about all my bookshelves, but it isn't true. Even in the little book room, it isn't true. I go to collected book reviews to find out what other people have quipped about Montesquieu or Fanny Burney or whatever. And I go to the Penguin wall. I have a wall of Penguin Classics in the other room, and Penguins have always been a source of sustenance for me, and it is still today. I go there, and it just sort of establishes a dialogue. I can lose an hour in front of the thing, and I shouldn't lose hours. My hours are accounted for. But I went there just recently. I want to show you, Elizabeth, I want to show you what can happen when I go to that Penguin wall. I went there recently to look at new arrivals at Penguins that Penguin Classics, that I get some Penguin Classics in the mail, and I wanted to look at some new arrivals and sort of beat myself up over the fact that I haven't written about them. And the one that I went to is from September. It has a foreword by Edwidge Danticat, and it is the Penguin Book of Migrant Literature. Obviously a germane subject today, and that's what this is. This was from September, and it's a collection of literature written by migrants. Every year, millions of people move to a new country. From war refugees to corporate expats, migrants constantly reshape their places of origin and arrival. And this is a book, a new anthology, a Penguin original of their literature. And I was standing there, I was shifting weight from foot to foot, and I was reading it and thinking of all the things that I could write about it. And so I pulled it off the shelf, but because I was at the Penguin shelf, I immediately started wandering elsewhere as well, all propelled by all kinds of things. Like, just recently, I made a video walk through the New York Sunday Times. And one of the little things in the book review section is what we're reading lately. And their theater critic wrote a paragraph about how he's been rereading Dickens, how Dickens is everything to him, is just a wellspring of renewal for him. And I've heard that from so many people, including on BookTube. Katie at Books and Things is the #1 Dickens fan on BookTube. He's never done that for me, and I have a large number of Dickens Penguin trade paperbacks. And so when I was at the Penguin wall and I was pulling down this new thing, I immediately went looking at the Dickens, and I found the book that critic was specifically referencing, which is Dombey and Son. And I pulled it off the shelf because I'm curious to know if it can tempt me between now and the end of the year. I've read this a couple of times, and it did nothing for me. Third String Trollope does more for me than this author at his best. But you read a passionate paragraph like that, and it gets to you. If you're a book person, it, of course, gets to you. So I pulled that off the shelf. And while I was doing that, my eye was caught by another book, which, of course, is on my mind. Because right now, I am in Preptober. I am preparing for NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, which is in the month of November. And right now, my novel is in a bit of a quagmire. My novel is going to be about the English poet Sir Philip Sidney. And so when I was at the Penguin wall and I had Dickens in hand, I thought, well, where is my Sidney? I should read all the Sidney that I have. I should read all the introductions and the notes, all the critical apparatus about Sidney. So I pulled down the Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia, which is not, this is poorly titled because it's not just Philip Sidney, it's also his sister. That's why it's called this. And it was always a as much a collaborative work as a single work, and it's impenetrable to today's reader. No one is going to read this for pleasure. And I am probably not going to read right now. I pulled it off the shelf. I'll put it on the nightstand. I'm probably not going to read anything more than large chunks of the Arcadia. Instead, what I will do is concentrate on the nonfiction. I'll concentrate on the introduction and the notes to try to get some sort of mojo back for my Philip Sidney NaNoWriMo novel, which is right around the corner. It's a week away, and it's not behaving in any way. But when I was there, when I was at the Penguin Wall, and I was thinking about Sir Philip Sidney, and I was thinking about Charles Dickens, I was also thinking about the recent library tours that I've been doing. I'm doing a library tour of the Little Book Room. So everywhere I go in that room, whether I'm squatting down in puppy territory or I'm up on a step ladder, I'm within easy reach of the Penguin Wall. And every book, almost every book that I pull off the shelf in that library tour is making me think of the Penguin Wall in one way or another. Like, for instance, the great travel writer Halliburton, who did 4 or 5 best-selling books of his great travels. Those books are practically in the common domain. The black and white photos that accompany them, I'm sure, most of them are beautiful. I'm sure that they are easily negotiable. Where is the Penguin volume of Halliburton? Where is that? I don't know where it is. And there are a bunch of other things, too. Like, for instance, the Lawrence Ellsworth translations of Alexander Dumas, all of the Dumas novels. Dumas is heavily represented in Penguin Classics, but these are by far the best English versions that have ever appeared. Penguin ought to be snatching them up and bringing them out, especially the Three Musketeers, but all the others too. And one of the things that I pulled down off the shelf just recently in the library tour was a critical edition of the poems of John Keats. And I was when I was done with the library tour, I was thumbing through that volume, and I was reading the notes and the end notes to it, and the editor for that volume was constantly referencing the fact that Keats was also a brilliant letter writer, which is something I know. I love the letters of Keats. I've had hardcover editions. I've had the Oxford World Classics, and when I thought about that at the Penguin Wall, I immediately made an arm for the Penguin selected letters of John Keats. And I was standing there, and I was thumbing through it, and it was reminding me that editor was absolutely right. Keats is such an incredible letter writer. In my opinion, just because of my I have my favorites sort of locked in stone. Lord Byron is a better one, but still, Keats is more atmospheric, and his letters are much more self-conscious, so they're much more rounded. Byron was, I think, a better letter writer, but a lot of times you need the footnotes in order to understand what he's talking about, because he's not writing the letter for anyone but its recipient. And I was rereading some letters of Keats, and I was rereading some of the notes, and that made me think, well, gee, this Penguin Wall answers almost anything that I can pull off the library tour, and that made me think of something I just did the other day, which was a bunch of Oxford World Classics, one of which was the Campaigns of Alexander by Arrian, the historian Arrian, and that was in an Oxford World Classics, but I immediately went and found my Penguin, because when I had the Arrian, after I made that video, I had it in my hand, and I was going through it, and that made me think, what are the big differences between that and this? And, of course, the Oxford Arrian is new. Relatively new, and this is not. This translation is by Aubrey de Selincourt, who was a workhorse translator for Penguin Classics a century ago, 70 years ago. So he did a number of my favorite translations for Penguin, but the differences between him and the new person for Oxford will be glaring. And as I was standing there comparing the two of them, I noticed that they were, and that's always instructive. I love that. And so this is to give you a little bit of an idea of what a quicksand pit my Penguin Wall is that you have contributed to, and that I hope you keep contributing to. It's a quicksand wall. I can find a reason to stay there. Those penguins are connected organically to virtually everything that I read, either because there's a Penguin edition, or there's a Penguin edition of somebody that the person knew, or there's not a Penguin edition, and I wish there were. But this last book I want to show you, this last Penguin, is not a Penguin edition, and it never will be. But it is a Penguin book. It's by Lindsay McCrae, and it's My Penguin Year. This guy went to Antarctica. He's a photographer. He went to Antarctica, and he stayed there for a long time, month after month after month, moving around and photographing the emperor penguins who lived there. And it was dedicated to his task. He missed the birth of his child because he was there instead on the ice with the penguins. And deep inland, where the penguins go, because it is the ultimate nursery. It's the ultimate safe nursery. They are equipped from millennia of evolution to survive in 70 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, and stone cutting winds and complete darkness. And no other animal is. There are no predators. So the only thing that's going to kill an emperor penguin or an emperor penguin chick would be the elements. And it's a canny strategy. And of course, it's got every conservation writer's idea. It's got all their imaginations going, because radical climate change will get rid of that. It will get rid of that defense. Suddenly, foxes and wolves and even bears will be able to make the long trek and endanger these birds, and they are completely helpless. If not for their adaptation to the most extreme winter weather in the world, they have no other defenses. They couldn't possibly survive. In a season or two, emperor penguins would be extinct. And naturalists are looking to the day not long from now when that actually happens. And so that's going to make this book a little bittersweet, but also fascinating. And I have to, it's full of his photography, and I have to say, one of the photos that is the best author photo that I'm likely to encounter this year. That is what you call an author photo. And there you have it, Elizabeth. That's a video of penguins just for you on your birthday. The rest of you can watch, and feel free in the comments field to wish her happy birthday. I'm sure I'm not the only channel she comments on. But I'm going to wrap this up for now, and I'm going to put these penguins back on the shelf and try real hard not to pull others out in their place. I'm going to try real hard not to do that. The time for the penguin wall is coming. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Happy birthday, Elizabeth. You've brought me so much joy on BookTube. And I will see you all soon. Thank you, BookTube.